Alright, today we're taking another look at the Harrier GR.1 in War Thunder, specifically after the big buff to SRAAMs in the Tusk Force update. These missiles have always been known as more of a gimmick, but were very capable at super close range, but with their recent changes, they might finally be viable out to much longer distances. So, does this actually turn the Harrier into a dangerous dogfighter in 2025, or is it still a niche jet? Let's break it down. Before the buff, the SRAAM was infamous in War Thunder. On paper, it was meant to be one of the most agile, short-range infrared missiles ever made, but in-game it just didn't work that well. The range was tiny, it would self-destruct after a certain time, and realistically could only be used under 1.5 kilometers. You had to fire it basically on top of the enemy to score a hit. The missile bled speed, often spinning out or falling behind if the target did even a modest maneuver. Unlike other missiles, it couldn't glide once the booster was out of fuel, and whilst it had insane agility, in practice it either missed completely due to range, or was defeated by a simple flare. All in all, the SRAAM was highly specialised. It was definitely strong when used correctly, but was not that strong outside of super close range. Now, here's what's different. The recent patch gave the SRAAM a lot of stat changes. It is basically a full rework and the numbers are quite huge. Overall, its drag was reduced. This means the missile holds speed far better. It had an increased wing area multiplier, improving its lift and control. The booster was adjusted. It has less raw force, but almost double the burn time, giving it sustained thrust instead of a quick burst, and more importantly, increased range. Its guidance time was increased, up to 6 seconds. And finally, its mass was reduced after the booster change, making it lighter and more responsive in flight. There were, however, a few nerfs to go with this for balance. The max G load is now 45, and the angle of attack is limited to 30 degrees. Its track rate was reduced, along with a 0.2 second delay before the guidance kicks in after launch. What this all means is that SRAAM is no longer completely ineffective past 1.5 kilometers. There were some changes to its raw maneuverability, but it is now much more usable, capable of hitting targets as far as 3 kilometers. So, how does this change affect the Harrier? Well, the GR.1 has always been an odd machine. It's subsonic, with no radar-guided missiles, and no countermeasures whatsoever. On paper, it's often outclassed at its BR, though definitely still usable and fun, as covered in my previous video in the card above. But what the Harrier does have is excellent low-speed handling, great nose authority, and the ability to force close-range engagements with its thrust vectoring. Now though, with the SRAAM buff, you can actually use them like other IR missiles, not just at point-blank ranges. You can throw out an SRAAM, and no, it won't lose all energy in a second and self-destruct. You can chase targets slightly further out, no more waiting for the target to be under 1 kilometer to increase hit chance. And since the missile now has a longer burn time, it keeps pushing through maneuvers instead of stalling mid-turn or randomly spinning out. It finally feels like the missile matches the Harrier's intended role, a brutal dogfighter at short range. Of course, there are still drawbacks to the Harrier. Being subsonic, you're often at a disadvantage even before you get into missile range. The guidance delay on the SRAAM makes it slightly less reliable in knife fights. You can't just fire and instantly expect the missile to track like you could previously. And its flare resistance is still poor. The SRAAM is usually defeated by a single flare due to no IRCCM. Even with the changes, you still need to play smart and ambush, stay low and fight where the Harrier's nose authority matters, or climb high and dive down on opponents, making use of the SRAAM's maneuverability. So, is the Harrier GR.1 actually worth flying again now? The SRAAM buff has completely changed its viability. It's no longer a bit of a meme, it's a much more real threat in close range fights. If you like dogfighting, ambush tactics and using unusual weapons, the Harrier is even more fun than before. But if you prefer high-speed play or long-range missile duels, this still won't be the jet for you. In other words, the SRAAM finally gives the Harrier its identity. It's not just another strike jet, it's a dangerous knife fighter, and potentially it may see a BR increase with how effective the new changes will be. Though if this is the case, there is also the argument to add the missile's all-aspect capability it had IRL. So that's the Harrier GR.1 after the SRAAM buff, a jet that's gone from CQC gimmick to a more rounded threat, at least in the right situations. But what do you think? Have you tried the new SRAAMs yet, and do you think they make the Harrier worth flying again? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown useful or entertaining, then don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss future War Thunder videos. Thanks for watching.